This chart tracks the U.S. homelessness count over the last decade. Looking at the far right, the red bar highlights a staggering reality. 771,480 people were unhoused on a single night in 2024. This 18% jump marks the worst crisis in recorded history. The math driving this surge is straightforward. This graphic visualizes the national housing gap. The donut chart on the left shows a shortage of 7.1 million affordable units for extremely low-income renters. But national data can feel sterile. On the ground, in neighborhoods like Kensington and Philadelphia, the reality is dense and chaotic. People are pushed into crowded encampments, sleeping under elevated train tracks because they cannot afford rent. A highly lethal variable has now entered this housing shortage. The illicit street drug supply has been almost entirely overtaken by synthetic opioids, specifically fentanyl, which is increasingly cut with an animal tranquilizer called xylazine. On the street, xylazine is known as Tranq. Because it is a non-opioid sedative, standard overdose reversal drugs like Narcan are useless against it. Users experience profound central nervous system depression, restricted blood flow, and rapid tissue death, leading to severe, non-healing skin ulcers. Individuals suffering from these necrotic wounds are effectively trapped. Without stable housing, proper wound care is impossible. They cycle constantly through emergency rooms and behavioral health clinics, stretching local emergency services to the breaking point and driving the public cost of this crisis to astronomical heights. This intersection of zero housing inventory and a toxic drug supply has mutated a social crisis into a medical emergency. It is a highly lethal public health failure that local responders are simply not equipped to manage with traditional shelter models alone. There is an economic paradox at the center of this emergency. Leaving unhoused individuals on the streets to cycle through emergency rooms and local jails actually costs taxpayers significantly more than simply paying to put a roof over their heads. This chart compares the per-person annual costs of our current approach. The top row shows a high utilizer experiencing homelessness generates up to $44,000 a year in emergency room costs alone. Meanwhile, permanent supportive housing costs just $14,000 annually. This exact math is the foundation of the Housing First model. By prioritizing permanent housing without preconditions like sobriety, cities dramatically reduce costs. Houston utilized this framework to shrink its homelessness rate by 63%. The city deployed $1 million in flexible, locally controlled funds. That seed money was structured as a catalytic investment to unlock $10 million in public and private capital, bringing local business leaders to the table to rapidly build new units. Homelessness is a housing supply and financial coordination problem, and we already possess the proven frameworks to fix it. But as local governments build out these highly effective, data-driven frameworks, a new obstacle has emerged from Washington, D.C. The president's proposed budget for fiscal year 2026 outlines a severe pivot away from the exact social safety nets that fund these local interventions. The proposal targets the Department of Housing and Urban Development with a massive 44% budget cut to its affordable housing and community development programs. Inside those cuts is a plan to completely eliminate the Continuum of Care program. This is the precise financial engine that local communities rely on to coordinate services, track data, and match federal dollars with private investments. The immediate physical stakes of dismantling this program are severe. Without Continuum of Care funding, roughly 170,000 existing units of permanent supportive housing will lose their financial backing, putting the disabled individuals living inside them at immediate risk of eviction. This triggers a cascading failure at the local level. The private capital leveraged in cities like Kansas City relies on the stability of federal matching funds. If that federal floor gives way, local models will collapse financially, sending hundreds of thousands of people back out into a lethal street environment. We have the data to prove that housing is cheaper than the street, and the local models that prove it works. Yet these sterile federal budget proposals carry the power to dismantle that progress, turning a solved problem back into a lethal flesh and blood crisis.